we're just introducing Claire Sauvage Mar, Grants and Engagement Coordinator with BC Healthy Communities. And Claire's international background includes work with nonprofit organizations in Korea, Vietnam, and New York City. And she brings experience in community engagement, physical activity, and lifelong health research. And Claire enthusiastically believes that holistic public health and planning are essential to thriving and resilient communities. So welcome. And Joanna Henderson will also be presenting with Claire. And she's a communications specialist. Yeah?
I'm going to let Claire on this one, so you don't need to introduce me.
Oh, okay.
I'll remain a mystery. Thanks, though.
Okay, well, there we go. Take it away, Claire. We can see your slides up on the screen.
Okay, you can see them. That's great. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. My name is Claire Sauvage Mar. I am a recent addition to the BC Healthy Communities team as the Grants and Engagement Coordinator. It's really a great honor to be able to speak to you guys a little bit about equity and engagement. So thank you very much for giving us some space on today's agenda. There's obviously a lot we can talk about in terms of building equity into community engagement processes, and I believe that many of you who are on the phone are extremely well versed in the field of community engagement, as well as the ongoing conversations about equity in health and in community building projects. Healthy Communities has learned some really interesting things over the past few years through our work, but we don't have all the answers. And from an equity perspective, that's actually really the point, knowing that we have limits to our own understanding and perspectives, and that we need to lift up the voices of others. Slide. Okay. So BC Healthy Communities Society is a province-wide not-for-profit. We facilitate the ongoing development of healthy, thriving, and resilient communities. Our flagship program is Plan H. This program is a partnership with the Ministry of Health, and it supports the province's health promotion strategy through engaging local governments, authorities, and other partners from different sectors in order to create healthier communities. So a quick equity refresher. Equity is a pretty complex area, and there's a lot of conversations now about how we conceive of equity, but it's most simply defined as leveling out access to opportunities, access to power, resources, and so forth. And there are quite a few different graphics out there that have been used to illustrate this concept of equity. You may have run across one where there's different people of different heights, different sizes who are standing on different sizes of boxes. But this particular image from the Robert Wood Foundation I find is pretty intuitive. And the idea that it's trying to get across is that thinking that the same approach will work universally is like thinking that everyone is able to ride the same bike. But the problem with this graphic, and as with most equity graphics out there, is that it sort of implies, and it might imply that equity is actually a need to correct an issue that's inherent to the people themselves, that people have different bodies that need to be accommodated into an existing system. So when we use this graphic as a metaphor for societal inequities, it's a little bit less accurate, I would say. The problem is really society's uneven distribution of opportunities. So perhaps in a 2.0 version of this graphic might be the ground underneath people's wheels being uneven. Maybe someone has a speed bump in front of them. Someone else has a pothole. For one person, it's raining. For another person, it's sunny. This is just to get you thinking about different ways that we think about equity in health and how we engage people. So what is an equity lens? I'm flying through quite a lot of these concepts because I only have a couple of minutes to share these ideas with you folks. But the bottom line is that policies and the built environment are often arranged in a way that creates structural barriers for individuals. So applying an equity lens means that we are considering how to reduce those barriers, especially when we're planning our engagement processes. So this is a conversation that we have to have very early and very often. We have to identify those systemic barriers that are common to traditional engagement processes and consider some of these questions on the bottom of the screen. So who benefits from the impact of a given decision, who's negatively impacted, who's not even present in the engagement process, which voices are missing. With this equity lens in mind, on this screen you'll see the IAP2 spectrum, and the IAP2 is the International Association for Public Participation. I forgot to put a little citation there, but definitely look up IAP2 if you ever have any questions about community engagement processes. Engagement is a process, and it's one that invites community members into making decisions. It's a chance to give the public an opportunity to provide input into really anything that affects them, whether it's policy change, whether it's bylaws, whether it's infrastructure changes or changes to the built environment. Participation and engagement is the process of including more voices in that decision making. And so this IAP2 spectrum is found in our action guide on healthy community engagement. The idea overall that IAP2 is trying to advance is that the more stuff on the right, to the right of the spectrum that you're doing towards empowerment, so towards true self-determination for communities, the better your process is. So in an ideal world, this is where engagement can build and also build on the capacity and ingenuity of communities. But this isn't to say that there isn't a place for what's on the left. Sometimes a continuum might imply that there's a good side and a bad side, but it may not always be possible to operate at the level of full empowerment from the start. And so the comment that's on the left here, that we often think that we've got to push to the right, we've got to fully empower community that we're engaging, even when there isn't really a potential for the community to be involved. I'm trying to be a little bit controversial with that by saying that the most important thing is to avoid engaging communities in a way that leaves them with the impression that their input is fundamental when there already has a decision that's been made. So we don't want to come to a community with an already baked cake and tell them that they're going to be able to have input into the recipe. So my message here really is that there's really always a need to properly and very patiently manage expectations so that the public is aware of where they are in terms of this level of public impact. Having a little trouble with the slides. There we go. So another idea I'm going to throw at you guys is this scaling of engagement efforts according to proportionate universalism. So with proportionate universalism reflects that different approaches and resources need to be applied to different groups based on or proportionate to particular structural disadvantages that they might face. My question to you is, what if our engagement resources were also scaled in the same way? This might mean that for every $1 that we spent on people who already have good access to better health outcomes, we might actually spend $100 in terms of engaging people who might have barriers facing them to health and well-being. So that proportionate distribution of resources could leave those equity-seeking groups feeling more empowered. And one great example from our own organization was in Strathcona in a case where we needed to find some more responses from Indigenous and Aboriginal families, and our consultants went to Aboriginal childcare centers, met families, and helped them fill out surveys in person, spent a lot more time with each family than what normally might be provided in an engagement process. This was certainly more expensive, but it was very valuable because of the fact that our engagement resources were scaled towards lifting those equity-seeking voices, and in that way the process was made more equitable. So to sum up what I've discussed so far is really this notion of context experts versus content experts. And equitable engagement really means that we would treat those people who have lived experience the same way that we would treat people who have content expertise. A great question to ask people during an engagement process is, what can I only learn from you? It's a chance to get really rich information and based on those lived experiences, which traditionally might not be so heavily weighted in an engagement process. I should also make a note that when we're thinking about those context experts, we really need to consider some of the ways that we can lower the barriers to their participation in an engagement process. So how can we design that process to be inclusive, safe, and culturally appropriate? Some of it's pretty straightforward, but it does require that investment up front. So paying for childcare and paying for transport so that people can get there, making sure they know there won't be any repercussions from their workplaces or financially if they decide to participate, including ceremony or offering materials in multiple languages. These are all really important ways that we can connect with some of those groups who are less heard from. And above all, really, it's trust that makes or breaks engagement. One of my favorite quotes these days is that progress moves at the speed of trust. And if you have a chance to visit the Tamarack Institute's website, they have a number of really interesting resources that all circle around how to build trust with equity-seeking groups. And they also have some very interesting resources on how to repair trust should it be broken, which is also very interesting and probably worth reading before you even go into an equitable engagement process. And here are kind of the three parts of keeping equity at the heart of engagement. So it's what we've boiled it down to. So first, it should be reflective. It must consider those systemic and structural barriers that might make an engagement process inaccessible to people. And again, it's considering that relationship between the social determinants of health and those barriers to engagement for equity-seeking groups, and asking those questions about who's participating, who's being excluded, who might be unduly, unfairly put upon by a decision if they're not present. Secondly, authenticity is really important in the process. So that is surrounding our motivation, our genuineness. It's really our job as people who are doing engagement to get to know the public that we're seeking to hear from. So the main question, have I done my homework? Have my or my organization's understandings of this community in the past been imperfect? And how am I going to use it moving forward? Have we considered bringing in organizers from within the targeted community? Are we engaging? These are all really important questions, and even a little bit of time thinking about this can really some interesting questions to light. And finally, transparency. So being very clear, literally clear up front about what we can do and what we can't do as a result of this engagement. So again, it's properly and patiently setting expectations and following through. And this all really builds into a trust-based relationship. Here is our Plan H Healthy Community Engagement Action Guide. I hope that some of you have had the chance to visit our planH.ca website and peruse this really great resource. It's found online, and we also have hard copies, so please let us know if you would like to have any sent to you. What's great about this resource is there are a ton of actions and examples from Canadian communities, mostly in BC. There's a glossary of terms, a really nice checklist to make sure that the engagement process that you're looking to do is more authentic and sort of moving towards that more equitably informed engagement process. And there's a lot more reading and resources if you'd like to get more informed. And here are a couple more resources about equity and engagement more generally. I think that you guys will be probably sharing quite a few more throughout this conversation once we're finished. I didn't include IAP2 or TRAC here, but again, if you'd like some more detailed resources, please feel free to get in touch. I've got my email on the next slide. I did want to note that there's a pretty exciting thing called the Equitable Evaluation Initiative. I'm only familiarizing myself with this now, and I know that this is about engagement, but at the same time, this is just to show that there's a lot of work being done right now around equity in all facets of our work, and there's just some really cool things happening, and I would encourage people to check out their blog. There's pretty advanced conversations happening on that group site. And yeah, I do want to encourage you all to check back on our PlanH website to see more up-to-date community examples from around BC in our work at PlanH and BC Healthy Communities. And that's it for me. So I really appreciate having the chance to speak to you all today. That was intense, and I think only scratching the surface. And I'm always happy to chat about what work we're doing here at BC Healthy Communities and how we're incorporating these practices into our daily work in our own communication. And I would really love the chance to learn from any of you guys as well. So thanks very much, and back over to you, Anita.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Claire. That was a really great presentation, and the guide, the action guide that's produced is a great resource, and our team's using it and passing it out to our partners. So thank you so much, and it's a great segue into our next presentations, which are to do with accessibility. So thanks very much. If you have questions, I put Claire's contact information into the GoToMeeting. Of course, it can be found at BC Healthy Communities. If you just Google it, you'll find them. So thank you very much.